Hello everyone and welcome to Undercurrent News' latest webinar. I'm Tom Seaman, the Editorial Director of Undercurrent. Today I'm going to be moderating a top panel to cover the production and price outlook for farm shrimp in 2021, as the coronavirus pandemic has become the new normal. Firstly, I'd like to thank our sponsor Grobest, which is a major Asian feed producer backed by the European private equity Permira. We also have Samson Li, CEO of Grobest, on the panel today. But as I always say, Grobest had no more input into the content of the webinar than any other panelist. Sponsors are a way we can make these webinars viable, but also keep them free and open for everyone to benefit from. The last time we did a shrimp webinar in September 2020, we covered production and the markets. This time, we're focusing upstream, and we're going to have another webinar on the evolution of the markets in March. That's not to say we won't touch upon the downstream side in the next hour and a half. It's just the focus will be more on the outlook upstream. When we did the webinar back last March, it looked like global production was set to dive as much as 600,000 metric tons due to the pandemic. Well, that didn't quite happen. Indian production did drop dramatically, but a surge in Ecuadorian output somewhat offset this. So, will this Ecuadorian growth continue in 2021? Will Ecuadorian prices recover? Will India increase production again? And who could become the next 1 million metric ton producer? We will cover all of these questions and more on our panel today. On the panel, we've got some top executives to cover the main Asian production countries and also Ecuador, the powerhouse in Latin America. So maybe each panelist can introduce themselves and briefly say a bit about their companies. Let's go around alphabetically on surnames. So Samson, can you go first, please?
Thanks, Tom. Good day, everybody. My name is Samson Li, the CEO of Grobest. Grobest is an Asian aquafeed company specialized in high-value fish, shrimp, and functional performance feed with our self-developed technologies. We presence in 8 countries in Southeast Asia and China. I myself have been involved in the animal nutrition and aqua net and nutrition industry value chain for more than 20 years. Internationally in Indonesia. Before joining Grobest, I was the president of ADM Animal Nutrition. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks, Samson. Maybe Gabriel, you could speak.
Hi, I am Gabriel Luna from GLuna Shrimp. I've been a shrimp farmer for 6 years in Ecuador. I've been working in the shrimp industry for 18 years now. I've worked with great export companies. I've helped the company source products from other parts of the world in Ecuador. And I've been studying Ecuadorian statistics since 2005, and I keep a very tight record of our production outlooks, our production in the past, our growth, and the reasons why our growth is happening. Thank you.
Thanks, Gabriel. Robbins, maybe introduce yourself.
My name is McIntosh. I work for Charoen Pokphand Foods. I'm based out of Thailand, although today I'm speaking from Florida. Charoen Pokphand Foods is a large integrated livestock company with significant activity in aquaculture, shrimp being the basic species. My life has pretty much been devoted to growing shrimp since the late 1970s. I've been in 8 different countries of the world. And so that really has been my interest, and my focus is on world shrimp. Thank you.
Thanks, Robbins. Well, last but not least, Manoj, can you maybe give us an intro to yourself, please?
Greetings to all of you. I'm Manoj Sharma, and I'm actually a shrimp farmer from India. And I'm also the managing director of my shrimp farming company, Mayank Aquaculture Private Limited. And presently, also I'm the president of Gujarat Aqua Feed Dealers Association and Gujarat Aquaculture Association. And we are based in Gujarat, India, which is west coast of India. Thank you. Thank you, Tom.
Thanks very much, Manoj. Thanks for the intros, everyone. So I'm going to kick off now by giving a short presentation, which will be setting the scene for the panel discussion. This will take around 10 minutes. There's a lot of slides, but I'm going to kind of rattle through them. We're then going to have a panel for 50 to 60 minutes, leaving at least 20 minutes for questions from the audience. And please ask questions as you go along, because you can I think where you log into the portal, you can ask questions. So if as we're going along, just fire away, type questions in there, and then we'll kind of circle back and we will get to these questions at the end. So I'm going to share my screen and get this presentation moving. And of course, it's not there. Here we go. There we go. Is that working for everyone? Can everyone see that? Panelists?
Yep.
Great.
Yes.
So before I go through this this production data, I wanted to put it out there that this is just a forecast. Robbins' numbers are based on input from his extensive network, but then Grobest have their figures, and Gabriel and Manoj also have their views on Ecuador and India. But what's interesting is that the views of all the panelists are kind of going in the same direction. So here we go. According to data from Robbins, global production is forecast to have dropped around 315,000 metric tons in 2020 to 3.39 million. And this includes around 225,000 metric tons of black tiger shrimp. That's a drop of around 8%, so not as steep as the 16% which was being forecast last September when we did the last webinar. Then for 2021, there's a recovery being forecast, 3.69 million metric tons, which would be just under the 2019 level. Now looking at the main production regions, Asian production fell by close to 400,000 metric tons to around 2.22 million. This is set to recover in 2021, as you can see from the data here in blue, but not to the 2019 level. Robbins' forecast is around 2.44 million metric tons for Asia. Meanwhile, the output in the Americas passed 1 million metric tons in 2020, with a further increase forecasted for 2021. And we'll see later that the main driver here is Ecuador. So breaking down the output in Asia, we saw falls from all the main production countries in 2020. Indian production came down the most, dropping around 200,000 metric tons to around 570,000. Forecast from Robbins is for this to increase a bit in 2021 to around 600,000 metric tons. Then good recoveries are expected in China, Vietnam, and Indonesia also. Thai production is also forecast to increase. So I'm going to quickly run through the various production countries in Asia in isolation, starting with India. So here you can see an Indian production forecast seen on its own, the other countries. We'll discuss with Robbins and Manoj later why they think the recovery is forecasted to be slow after the 25% drop in 2020. Samson is a bit more bullish on India, as we will come to later. Then looking at China, Robbins here has a forecast for an increase of 14% in 2021 to 570,000 metric tons, which is obviously a contentious figure because it's not in line with what the government says. But it looks like the bottom has been hit here, and production in China is increasing. As we will see later, prices in China are also high at the minute due to strong demand in the live market. Looking at Vietnam, the forecast for Vietnam is an increase again after the drop in 2020, so an increase of around 10% to roughly 500,000 metric tons. Around 90,000 metric tons of production in Vietnam is black tiger, according to Robbins' data. But we will discuss this more later, but Vietnam is actually seen as a strong contender to pass 1 million metric tons in future years. Looking now at Indonesia, Indonesian production dropped 6% to around 285,000 tons in 2020, but is expected to recover in 2021. The forecast we have is for production to hit 330,000 metric tons in 2021, which would be an increase of 60% year on year. Around 35,000 metric tons of this is black tiger. The Indonesian government has very bullish growth plans for the sector, which we will also discuss later on the panel. So you can see here, Thai production has been steady at or just under 300,000 metric tons since diving from over 600,000 metric tons in 2010 due to EMS. The forecast is for production to edge up in 2021, but is there any way to increase beyond this? It's another question which we can talk about on the panel later on. Now we're going to turn to look at the point of view from Grobest on Asian production. So you can see here the forecast provided by Grobest for this webinar, which is directionally similar but more bullish than Robbins's. Also, interestingly, Grobest has India passing 1 million metric tons by 2025, which is something that we can definitely discuss more on the panel later. Then, in terms of there's a lot of data on this, but essentially what's being said is that the driver for production growth predicted by Grobest is more intensive farms in Indonesia, Vietnam, and Thailand, as well as the land availability in India for more extensive farms. Now we're going to turn to Manoj's view here on India. So we can see here, looking at the forecast which Manoj has supplied, he a bit more bullish than Robbins, but predicts a 20% drop really from just over 800,000 metric tons in 2019 to just over 600,000, 610.20 in 2020. And as we'll explore more on the panel, Manoj doesn't really put this drop down to COVID and does not see a kind of major recovery happening in 2021. Here we can see a very interesting chart which Manoj supplied, showing the cost of production broken down by size in India. So to put it simply, the bigger the shrimp, the lower the cost. However, of course, the issue is in India that the main market is the US, which demands smaller sizes. So something I'm sure which will come up on the panel later. Another interesting chart here. You can basically see the increase in PLs to 72 billion in 2020, but actually that's resulting in decreased production, according to Manoj. The reasons for this are lower water quality and persistent disease problems due to kind of increased intensification in farming in India, and Manoj can give more details on this later on the panel. And these are a couple of interesting visual charts. You can see here, this is Dumas in Gujarat, which is where Manoj operates in 2009. Very few shrimp farms. And then you can see here in 2018 that the area has become far more kind of intensively farmed, which can I guess lead to inefficiencies in production if not handled correctly. Now turning to look at the Americas, this is breaking down the production in the Americas by country. You can see that Ecuador is the real growth driver, and the other major production countries, such as Mexico and Brazil being the next two largest, actually dropped in 2020. The forecast is for Ecuador to continue to grow in 2021, and also for the other production countries to recover. Gabriel is a bit more bullish than Robbins on the outlook, but we can cover that more on the panel. Looking here closely at Ecuador, you can see the dramatic growth over the past few years. Robbins estimates around 750,000 metric tons in 2021 will be produced. But Gabriel is more bullish, predicting production could even go past 800,000 metric tons. The big question is, can this growth be sustained for Ecuador to pass 1 million metric tons, which is again something that we'll come onto on the panel later. Now looking quickly at Mexico, you can see production dropped to around 130,000 metric tons in 2020 and is expected to recover marginally in 21, but still beneath the 150,000 peak of 2019. Similar story in Brazil. Production dropped a bit in 2020 and expected to edge up to 65,000 metric tons in 21, but is again well short of the peak of around 90,000 metric tons in 2014. Now, the next section of the presentation is to just quickly look at pricing. We can see here that this is essentially a chart from our data platform, which compares the main production countries of shrimp. You can convert the pricing to dollars where it isn't in dollars. Obviously, Ecuador is in dollars, and then you can compare the raw material to just give a sort of sense of how the different countries are comparing. And we're taking a 60 count size for comparison, although in Vietnam it's a 50 count because we don't actually have data for a 60 count. And you can see here how the prices of shrimp in China are way, way higher than anything else, and are currently above $12 per kilogram in week 5, which is 4 times Ecuadorian prices and 3 times Indian when you translate that to dollars for the raw material. And then you can see Vietnamese prices have increased considerably in dollars, with Thailand next. And India and Indonesia are well above Ecuador, but prices are also rising in Ecuador. So you can see here, looking in more detail at prices in Ecuador, you can really see here that the pandemic had a pretty serious impact on pricing in the country, and prices actually at one point in 2020 hit the lowest level since well, our data goes back to 2011, and it's the lowest on record according to our data. Essentially, as Chinese demand fell. By contrast, prices in the main Indian hub of Andhra Pradesh have been pretty reasonable throughout the pandemic period. And I'd assume drop in production and continued strong US retail demand would be the reasons, but we can discuss this more later. Looking quickly at Indonesia, you can also see that the pandemic had a real impact there. Got a dive in prices in March, but then actually prices recovered and were kind of pretty much in line with previous years. Then Vietnam, kind of pretty volatile picture actually in 2020, but also then prices finished the year on a real high, and you can see that historically they're really not too bad. Yeah, it's a similar story with Thailand. Thailand isn't the sort of the trends of Thai pricing seemingly not really impacted by the pandemic. It was kind of following a similar kind of historical fluctuation that you'd normally see. Then finally for China. You can see here that the higher demand for domestic shrimp in China for New Year has seen raw material prices in Guangdong, which is kind of major farming hub, rocket. Prices in week 5 are more than double what they were at this point in 2020. Then the final section before we get to the panel is just a quick look at some trade data for major importing regions. So first of all, we've got the US here. You can see, looking at the US market, which is the biggest in the world for shrimp, 2020 was a strong year. The US imported close to 750,000 metric tons of shrimp, worth $6.5 billion in 2020, which is up 7% year on year. And then looking at this chart, you can see the evidence of that reduced Indian and increased Ecuadorian production in the US data. India accounted for 272,000 metric tons of US imports, worth 2.4 billion, which is down 5% in volume and 3% in value. But meanwhile, Ecuador sent the US 126,000 metric tons of shrimp, worth $788 million, which is up 52% in volume and 43% in value. Then looking at the EU market, you can see imports are actually down marginally, but still fairly strong, given the big drop seen in May when the kind of lockdowns, I guess the impacts of lockdowns first started to be felt on import data. From January to October, which is the latest data available, EU imports are down 2% to 629,000 metric tons, which is only actually a drop of 13,500 metric tons, far less than it seemed it would be at the peak of the pandemic. Looking at China, China imports a very different story to the US and EU data. In 2020, imports fell 16% in volume to 544,000 metric tons and 22% in value to $3.1 billion. In the second half of 2020, imports actually fell 48% in volume to 205,000 metric tons and 54% in value to 1.12 billion. So it was a real dive in the second half. So that's all the data. I mean, all of this data is taken from our data platform, which is available to premium subscribers, and also this presentation will be made available to premium Undercurrent subscribers too. So what's next? I mean, now it's time to get to the panel and talk about more of the outlook. So now, I think a good place to start would be where we kind of started back in September with Robins. So Robins, could you talk us through why production didn't drop as much as we predicted in 2020?
Well, I think the overview is very good, Tom. So it really sets the stage for this discussion. In May, when things lock down, we generally tend to overreact relative to how bad things would get. And it didn't get as bad as we thought. Asia did a really good job of controlling the disease and keeping farms open after a short closure of hatcheries, processing plants, etc. The second part of the equation was we really underestimated or overestimated what consumption that would be affected. So in the United States, we've actually seen an increase in consumption. And Europe and other countries, it did not affect the consumption. So we basically did not see a destruction in price of the shrimp. So with a good price and good controls on COVID in the production countries, there's been a strong rebound in the second half of the year. And in some cases, much stronger than we would have anticipated. As a result, the final numbers for the year are only off 5, 6, 7%. Again, the big story would be India and Ecuador. And if you're looking at shrimp production for export, you're really looking at India, Ecuador, Indonesia, Vietnam, and Thailand. India and Ecuador having been the biggest. India fell, but at the same time, Ecuador made up that fall with, in my opinion, an unexpected rise in shrimp production. So those balanced out. And the rest of Asian countries were off maybe 8 or 9%. And so as a result, the supply was much stronger than we had first thought it would be. But that was certainly supported by a stronger market than we thought might have occurred with the onset of COVID.
Well, thanks, Robbins. Maybe now you could turn to give us, the kind of rationale behind your outlook for production in 2021, and focus on the Asian countries, and then we can kind of circle back to talk about Ecuador later on.
Generally, I'm looking at long-term trends. So the trend for shrimp production has been an increase of 6 to 7% annually. Now that might be impacted if we thought there might be a shock in prices, or if there might be an onset of a new disease coming on. And neither of those cases are in effect here. So see no new disease on the horizon. That's not to say that we're without disease now, but those are background diseases. They're not new and significant relative to impacting production projections. And the market, again, the consumption is really going higher and higher. So seafood is becoming more and more popular. So with popularization of seafood and no new disease on the horizon, I would basically say we were going to probably increase historically at a 5 to 10% increase over the world. And on a country by country basis, that pretty much holds. So if I just have to put a stamp down, I would increase it 5 to 10%, probably closer to the 10% than the 5%.
Could you sort of drill down and give us some specifics on what you see happening in some of those major production countries this year?
Well, India, I guess we'll discuss more in detail, but India has taken a dramatic drop of 25%. So, of course, we're going to expect somewhat of a rebound there. The bottom is in. Now, the drop was a combination of COVID, and India's got some more of these background diseases, which may be increasing severity. But there should be a bounce back in India, although not fully back to where they peaked a couple of years ago. Thailand, again, we've got these nagging problems. And these problems, and again, with the prices staying stable, there's no great incentive for massive new investment in production. And so again, I think Thailand will increase at 5 to 10%. Vietnam historically has been very consistent at increasing 5, 10, 12%. And this year, I think they'll be closer to the 10 to 12% range than in previous years, as they are transforming technologies and the government does a good job of managing that industry. Ecuador, a very consistent grower, surprisingly consistent growing over the last 5, 6 years. And so given their strong performance in the last half of this year, that is going to continue into next year. And so again, I would say that Ecuador could be certainly up 10% and probably up slightly more than 10% going forward. Indonesia, large resource base in Indonesia, underdeveloped. So there's a lot of room for expansion in Indonesia, in my opinion. And so, again, given that the prices will be stable, Indonesia should increase 10% or more next year. I think that's all your countries.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Rob. That covers it. Thank you very much. So now to Samson. I mean, Grobest is a Pan-Asian, feed production company. So I thought maybe you could take us through, kind of your overview of what you see happening in the major production countries in 2021.
Sure, Tom. Thanks. I think we got to look at the supply and demand side. In Asia, most of the country are actually producing country, except China, probably with a net demand country and importing. So when we first experienced the COVID beginning of the year, especially Q1, China was the one actually who started. And then Q2, as we all know, I think in the other biggest demand country like US and EU locking down. So I think the first half was pretty much hampering the demand side. And then, of course, coupled with the logistic disruption, we know that, even the exporting country who badly want to export, exporting was a challenge, even with the container and the sugar. So having said that, I think I would kind of agree that as a whole, 2020, shrimp as a preferred aquaculture protein we see the very, very strong demand overall in general. I think especially in US as well in Europe, the retail channel, as we know, that has been picking up very, very nicely, especially in the second half, when all the food services were kind of locked down or closed. At the end of the day, I think people still got to eat, and they still prefer to eat. And if you Google on the recipe, there are a lot of recipes flying around. So people are trying to do a lot of home cooking. And if you look at also the fridge sales in last year, especially second half, there are many more households fridge capacity increase and sales going on. So we can imagine a lot of seafood and shrimp included has been picking up quite nicely in the second half of the year. With that, I think the producing country in Asia, for example, Vietnam has been a very nice portfolio with what they are producing and exporting country. They're very, very, very much balanced, not only to US or Europe, but also to high value-added consumer like Japan, Korea, and some to China as well. So they are exporting quite well at the end of the day, despite the fact, but we also see a slight reduction in Vietnam in terms of shrimp production. We are seeing somewhere around 5 to 10% reduction of the shrimp production. Thailand, very similar to Vietnam, also a nice portfolio and more on high value-added shrimp, but we see about the 10% reduction in general. Indonesia, actually, we're seeing that actually last year because of their network and sales channel to US, particularly to the retailers. I think perhaps they're the only one country as winning exporting country in Asia in 2020. We actually tend to believe that they are almost flat or even have a slight growth in Indonesia with their channeling to retailer in US. China is it's always difficult to read the number. The numbers that input number as just showed is decreased, but the demand of shrimps inside China, the Chinese love seafood, particularly shrimp. The second half drop from the world for the frozen shrimp and due to the COVID packaging psychology impact has actually boosted domestic live shrimp demand and price, as you show. So we believe China as a major shrimp eating country and importing country, we still believe that they will have strong growth over the years. So all in all, I think the one that who can have a good retailer channel, good exporting channel, somehow due to the COVID lockdown, I think some of the Asian countries also developed their domestic market to a certain extent. India is the last one that it dropped a lot in 2020. We were thinking about roughly also 20% due to COVID and also a lot of logistic disruption. But I think they will rebound very, very strongly with a lot of abundance in land and also low cost of production. And don't forget that also the exchange rate of Indian rupee has helped them a lot. There's been seeing very weak Indian rupee for some years, and it has not seems to be getting stronger. And still, I think that will help the Indian farmers a lot for export.
Thanks, Samson. Actually, it's good. It's interesting you came on to India there, because I was going to ask you next about India. I mean, your data shows that India passing. Obviously this is a forecast and a projection, but it shows India passing 1 million metric tons in 2025. So what makes you so bullish on India? I mean, do you think is that going to happen from merely kind of expansion of into the farming areas, or do you think that stuff needs to be done in terms of the efficiency and the processes of the farming as well?
Yeah, I think perhaps a little bit of everything, right? And as we are talking now, and maybe we have to revise the number, because the Indian government has just announced even more bullish and aggressive numbers. And they want to get to 1.4 million tons by 2024. So hopefully they have the right plans in place and putting a lot more infrastructure. And I do believe that I think that the land and also relatively less diseases challenge compared to other countries. They do have disease challenge, but relatively less again. And I think there's still extensive farming are still dominating in India. They will get a little bit more. In general, when I'm a bit have a different view from Robin. I think there will be diseases challenge. There will always be diseases challenge, and whether India or the other countries, when you go into more intensification, when there are more density within the same confined area, the motherland is going to revenge to a certain extent. So there will be new diseases, but however, there will also be new technology helping to manage these diseases and helping the production efficiency. So I think that these are all with India, and again the currency. One of the main, we seldom talk about that, but I think the currency is really helping India big times. If you look at the same time period with exporting country and currency, India has a lot of advantage at that as well, besides all this farming capability and practices.
Thanks, Samson. I wanted to ask you, there's another country has been very bullish recently in terms of the outlook for their shrimp industry, and that's Indonesia. Talking very optimistically about 1 million metric ton targets for the industry, which they seem to do every few years. But however, it sounds like there's it's quite serious, and that there's actually there's a strong political will to get behind it and industry cooperation. So can you tell us a bit more about what that's going on in Indonesia with that drive, please?
Yeah, I think same as India, the Indonesians even earlier put on their ambitions planned to grow the shrimp farming industry by 2.5x by 2024, 2025. And that has to come a lot of a new farming area also now moving further from the East Java, even further east from East Java, and Sulawesi. So we believe that the farming technology and experience in Indonesia, the farmer has been farming for a long time, and already in a very, very intensive or even super intensive farming model already. And as I just said, in 2020, we probably see that they didn't drop. They actually perhaps may have increased the production. So all this set up a very, very good foundation for them to grow further.
Well, thanks, Samson. I think it's now time to bring in to Manoj, our India expert. So Manoj, can you explain what happened with Indian production in 2020, and then go on to give us some insight into why you think that production won't recover significantly in 2021?
Thank you, Tom. When you ask me what happened in 2020 as a farmer, yeah, it's very, very, very difficult when you are dealing in farming, and that too mostly the rural area based shrimp farming. What actually happened when the government has declared a complete lockdown on March 22nd? And if you see the pattern of shrimp farming in India, Andhra Pradesh, which is the mainstay of shrimp farming in India, starts seeding in the mid of January. So when already the lockdown was declared, the cropping pattern was already 50-60 days old in Andhra Pradesh. And when you see the rest of the India, where I'm living, like Gujarat, West Bengal, and Odisha, mostly their shrimp farming and pond preparation starts in mid-March. So the moment the lockdown was declared, complete lockdown, for next 40-45 days, it was a very, very horrible situation. There was no communication, there is no roadways, motorways, railways, or not even the airways. Because the seed which is transported to Gujarat is all mostly comes from the airways, air freight. So suddenly everything locked down, and then slowly we have realized the after effects. But one nice thing happened within 2 weeks, that government has given the priority to sector for as an essential commodity, and that has given some freedom of movement. But since whether it's a hatcheries or a processing plants or whether it's a farms, there are all rural waste. And there was an obligation when it comes to like labor movement, vehicle movement, because each and everybody had the fear factor, because villagers were very much opposing even for the movement of laborers for in and out of the factories. So that was a very, very big challenge when it comes to India amid lockdown. And also because when India gear up for the January, February crop in Andhra Pradesh, so mostly the brood stocks comes in from December, January. So I think 100,000 pairs they comes in January, February, and the live feed supply was very much limited, and that has resulted in the seed effect, the quality of the seed effect. And then what happened in COVID, especially the other states, for example, if Andhra Pradesh is producing 50% of the India, so other states like Gujarat, Odisha, West Bengal, they also contributing 40% to the bucket. So they largely affected, and the crop was delayed by another 40-45 days. And what happened in Andhra Pradesh, because of the panic situation, a lot of farmers, they have gone for the panic harvest in the month of April. And that has resulted in severe demand and supply scenario, the price drop, the restrictions from the government, the labor restrictions, the social obligation, all came together at once. And because also in the processing plant, or whether it's in any industry, there was a social distancing norms. You cannot work more than 30% of the labors. So all has really affected very bad each and every segment of the shrimp farming industry. But when it comes to shrimp farming, the farmers are always on the very receiving end. Whatever happens, good, bad, or ugly, the farmers has to receive that. So what happened, most of the farmers looking into the panic situation in Andhra Pradesh, especially Gujarat farmers, or the lack of the seed and all, our first crop was almost wiped out. And then we started getting the seed from the month of May and June. And this is how the second crop of Gujarat, Odisha, and West Bengal started. But if you see the quality of the seed and also the brood stock, whatever was there, limited availability, so it has majorly affected us in the month of June, July, because weak seed, there was continuous running mortality issues in Gujarat, the temperatures and all have clubbed. So that has severely affected even the per pond productivity of Gujarat. So that's where you can see there is a drop of 20% in 2020. And if you're asking me what is my take for the 2021, I will very honestly say it's like a Murphy law. We started late, the crop had been delayed, and the second crop of Andhra Pradesh has been delayed, and second crop of 2020, they were supposed to harvest in December, been delayed by almost 40-45 days. So you can see a lot of hatcheries has to drain out the seed in the month of February. So this is what I see, that there is a further delay pattern, but I'm very hopeful, as Robin says, that Definitely, the first crop will be delayed, but second crop is as per the time. We may make up back at least by 10 to 12%. So you can see in 2020, maybe not the figure of 0.8 million ton, but definitely we can go back with a positivity of say another 700,000 tons in 2021. That's what my take.
Okay, well, thanks very much, Manoj. Maybe now let's move to Ecuador. Gabriel, maybe you can talk us through your production forecast for 2021.
Sure.
Kind of.
The end of 2020, Ecuador had a 7% growth in their numbers. And when we're talking about production and Ecuador's numbers, we always have to separate the two, because Ecuador's numbers that are projected and published everywhere are export numbers. They are not production numbers. So it's always very important to make a separation and say, okay, so Ecuador increased 7% in their exports in 2020. What did they export? Because if we export it head on, of course, that number could match, the export number could match the production number. But in the case of 2020, as everybody mentioned, in the initial 6 months, all of the food service restaurants shut down. And that was our main production item. So that caused that our export product had to change. So we shifted from doing head-on and headless blocks to doing more value-added. So towards the end of the year, we actually increased our value-added production for 2020. And if we take that into consideration, Ecuador's export volume increased 7%, but our production increased 11 to 12% based on just production numbers and the amount of product that was peeled. So from that, we can say for 2021, there will be, of course, a redirection in the type of product we are doing, because the pandemic is still going on. And we have to sell the product. The product that we were producing in the past is no longer a hot item in demand. So whatever the world is demanding, we cannot ignore the changes, ignore the need for value added, ignore how our market was affected as well. So we are definitely this year going to start to peel more, and it could be a bit, as far as production output, we feel we think we're strong, confident that we're going to grow between 5 to 10% in our production numbers. Now, in our export numbers, that's a whole different story, and we would have to analyze the export data that Ecuador posts to review if that number is actually possible, right? Because maybe the export numbers that Ecuador publishes will show that we are doing about the same as last year, but we are actually peeling a much higher percentage and leaving and not exporting in Ecuador the heads and the shells.
Roughly speaking, how much do you think of the production will be peeled in 2021 compared to 2020? Well,
I already saw an increase from 20. I'm going to go back to 2019 to 2020 and then to 2021. In 2019, we peeled about 240 million pounds of raw material. Okay. We peeled about 350 to 360 million pounds of raw material in 2020. I expect that number to go up to 450 million pounds in 2021. So at least 1/3 of our export will be peeled. Well, when you do it in export numbers and you take the heads off, it'll probably be 300. It'll be 1/5. We're probably gonna do 1/5 exported, which actually means a lot more when you put the heads back on in production.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, interesting. And then looking beyond 2021, do you think that the growth in Ecuador can be sustained? And do you see that 1 million metric tons as a kind of viable target with the current kind of industry model and approach, or do you think there has to be changes to the way things are done in the industry to kind of, to go to that level?
Well, in order to see a growth and reaching the 1 million metric tons, you need to have a healthy market, and you have to have a healthy demand. So you have to be able to sell everything that you're producing comfortably, enough so that the farmers are motivated, earn money, and keep on investing to grow. As far as land, Ecuador's growth has not been in building land. There are very few changes in certain lands. We have banana farms that are converted into shrimp farms. It takes a lot of time and investment. But our growth has been in the same ponds in productivity. We are not talking about intensive, but we are seeding a little bit more. Instead of 8 animals per square meter, up to maybe 15 animals per square meter. So that's almost double density from what we were doing in the past. If we expect the pandemic to calm down, I'm not saying it's going to go away, but we have vaccines all over the world. You're starting to see some effect. What we sell is a block of shrimp. So we sell head-on and headless block frozen as Ecuador. That's our main item. When that market shut down last year, our price was affected, right? But as soon as the restaurants start to open up again, they're going to demand that same product that they were demanding back into 2020. So there's a market, a complete part of the market that is shut down, and that's our main customer for the past, not for the future, because we already have orders in for more value added than we can produce, just because everybody was late, everybody was backed up. So Ecuador as a whole ramped up their value added production, and we can and will do the value added. Of course, it makes sense to do value added when you have it, but our factories were set up to do head on. So for us to see an important growth and reach the 1 million metric tons, if it wasn't because of COVID, I would have said that in 2022 we would have been in the 1 million metric tons. We were well on our way. In 2020, we started the year with 26% growth in the first 3 months. If we kept that number, we would have been there in 2022. So we have the know-how. We just need the market to be with us. And COVID took the market away from us. So definitely, I mean, this year, of course, we're going to peel more and more, and we just have to watch that number between export statistics, which is exported product, and production statistics from Ecuador. Just because Ecuador, the way they post numbers is not production numbers.
Yeah, thanks, Gabriel. That's very interesting. Now, Robbins, I'd like to get your views on the outlook for Ecuador, please. I mean, do you think that the pretty incredible growth seen in Ecuador can continue, and that the country can pass 1 million metric tons? And just give some views on that. And then, if not, which other country do you think, might get to that milestone first, and why? Robbins, you're on mute. Robbins, you're on mute. Robbins, you're on mute.
Okay, how about now?
That's fine. You're good to go.
Okay, to clarify,
you look like you're in full flow there.
About diseases, there will be new diseases, but diseases take more than 1 year to have impact on markets. EMS, actually, I knew EMS existed 3 years before it had market impact. So what I'm saying is I don't see any emerging diseases that are on the horizon right now that would have market impact next year. That's not to say that there never will be a new disease. There will be. But generally, you've got a 2 to 3 year window before a new disease builds to the point that it has market impact. And I don't see that happening next year. On Ecuador, I'm not Ecuadorian. Haven't been to Ecuador, I think, in 2-3 years now. So my perspective is generally from my own experience. Thailand was on its way to 1 million tons too, back in 2010, 2011. And we know where Thailand ended up, because there is such a thing as environmental carrying capacity. Environments will only take so much before they collapse, before they come back and they bite you. So what is the environmental carrying capacity of Ecuador? I don't know what that is, but I do know they've had 250,000 hectares of ponds. They're intensifying. So they're at, to get their 700,000 tons, what is that multiplication? That's probably almost 3 tons per hectare per year. 7 years ago, they were 1 ton per hectare per year. So they have intensified through addition of aerators, auto feeders, heavier stocking, but that also means more feed going into the environment. So the carrying capacity is real. And what that is for Ecuador, I don't know. But I do know from my own experience, when you get carried away with just easy increases like Thailand had, there is an endpoint. And it is very true. Governments are always pushing for more and more and more. And none of them ever talk about what is the responsible level we should go to before we exceed the boundary. Because when you exceed the boundary, the fall is long. And we've seen this in China. We saw this in Thailand. We see this in all the countries that get exuberant about production and about what the industry means. So in Ecuador, I don't think it's any different. They're intensifying. There's more feed being fed. There's more pollution. There's more nutrients going into their environment. Density has its own stresses. Ecuador has been successful because they do Ecuadorian. And they're the only country that can really do Ecuadorian, meaning they have large amounts of pre-built ponds that they can have lower stocking levels. That's less stress. That's less disease. That's less feed into the environment. So as you intensify, you do change the equation. So where the endpoint is for Ecuador, I don't know, but there is an endpoint.
On my question of the 1 million ton target, Robbins, is there which country is your favorite to hit that?
Well, right now, I kind of like the slow, steady movement of Vietnam. They're kind of methodical. They go up that 8-10% every year. They're transforming their technology. Now, carrying capacity can be modified by technology. So as you make technology more efficient, you add carrying capacity to a given area. So Vietnam has done a very good methodical job of transforming technology and increasing efficiency. So with that steady growth, that transformation of technology, I think Vietnam is doing an excellent job. Indonesia also, although they're behind, they've got the resource base, they've got the geography to do it. India certainly can do it, but I think they have to be a little bit more careful with their technology, and that they can also quite easily, I think, go over the cliff because they're kind of just continuing with the same technology, just piling it on and on and on. And there's just so far you can pile things.
Thanks, Robbins. Well, Manoj, what do you think of India potentially hitting 1 million or even 1.4 million, tons, as the government has kind of said? Do you think that is actually a viable target with the industry structured as it is, or do kind of major changes need to be made in the industry to get there? And if so, what are those changes?
So, Tom, let me be very honest, because I've been into farming for almost now 27, 30 years. So, on an outset, I will say, yes, India has definitely a potential to even produce 2 million tons. There's no doubt about the potential and the resources. But the question is that, as Robin says, can we afford it? Can we sustain it? Can we make it profitable? So that is very, very, very big thing for us, because if you see up to 2010, India was was a monodon country. And on an average, we have never produced more than 70,000 tons. Unless and until Vanami was introduced into our country. And if you can see the data you shared in your presentation, in 10 years, you could see India every year has added on more than 100,000 tons. It was in 2010, 100,000 tons to 200,000 in 2012. In 2015, we are almost 500,000 tons, and like that. In 2018-19, we already crossed 0.8 million. So definitely yes. But what I do agree with Mr. Robbins, that if you see what really matters in the farming is the carrying capacity. as India has already been entering into the fifth decade of shrimp farming, we need to understand the carrying capacity and go and improve our technology. Second thing, when it comes to the resources, yes, when we talk about the world sea, India is only that has a potential of 1.2 million hectare for brackish water shrimp development, but it is absolutely wrong. The recent macro level survey of India has clearly indicated that we have more than 8 million hectares of inland saline areas which are highly suitable for taking up inland shrimp farming. We can see the development in our northern states like Haryana, Punjab, which is really adding to the growth of the industry. And last but not the least, our Indian government has recently prioritized this sector, and they have launched the Aquaculture Infrastructure Development Fund and also the Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada Yojana. So their motive, their objective is to double the production, double the farmers' income, and double the exports. So definitely, if proper all thing is we can definitely, we has the potential to produce 1.4. But last but not the least, India is 1.3 billion population. If you see China, if you see Thailand, if you see Vietnam, it is well supported by the domestic market. But when it comes to India, our farmers are absolutely not supported in the domestic market. When it comes to shrimp, the domestic market in India is very negligible. But on the other hand, I will tell to this panel that India is producing 15 million tons of freshwater fish and locally consuming in India without even 1 or 2% exporting to the world. So when we say that India doesn't have a domestic market, it is absolutely wrong. We don't have the domestic market for the shrimp, and the government is taking an extra care. Even the farmers are taking now last 2-3 years. They have been very much in line with the domestic market. If another 2 years, if the domestic market really picks up, I think India has the potential to surprise the world even by crossing 1.5 million tons. That's what my take.
Thanks, Manoj. I wanted to also ask you a bit about pricing, because I used a chart which you'd sent me, which is very interesting, showing that the cost of production comes down dramatically if the size, the shrimp's going to a larger size. But isn't it the case that really the Indian industry is kind of set up around producing smaller size shrimp for the US market? So does a sort of how does the industry kind of deal with that sort of contradiction, I guess?
Tom, when we talk about India as in a whole, but India is a very big country. When we talk about shrimp farming in Andhra Pradesh has a different perspective. Shrimp farming in Gujarat has a different perspective. When we talk about Odisha, West Bengal, they are two very different states. For example, I will tell you, Andhra Pradesh, everything, there's 500 hatcheries are situated, almost 90% of them in Andhra Pradesh, East Coast. So the seed cost, the feed cost, the electricity cost is almost a very, very affordable and level it is available to Andhra farmers. Whereas in Gujarat, our feed cost is almost 30 cents higher. The PL cost is double than the Andhra Pradesh. So Gujarat, West Bengal, Odisha cannot afford to produce what Andhra Pradesh is producing. So we cannot compare apple and oranges. It's very difficult for us when you compare Andhra Pradesh and our Gujarat. But then also, what I mean to say, India is on a whole divided into a crop calendar. So generally, Andhra Pradesh starts in January, February, and they harvest in May, June. Whereas in rest of the India, they go for March, April stocking, and they June, July, August. So 8 lakh tons of shrimp in India is almost harvested in the month of May, June, July, August, 4 months. So the demand and supply, it plays the major role in pricing. If I'll tell you, in June to August, the price for 30 count is average farm gate. I'm not telling you the export price. The farm gate is hardly $5. And if you take 40 count, it is almost 4 and 4. If you take 50 count, it is 3.7. And in our area, farmers cannot make money if they want to harvest shrimp less than 20 gram. But in surprisingly in Andhra Pradesh, even for 100 count, the farmers still make some money. So price depends upon the calendar year of the harvest and demand and supply. Right now, when I'm talking to you, last season, to me as a farmer, for 50 count, I got hardly for Indian rupees, we can say 240. So roughly $3.3 US. But today, for the same count, I'm getting almost $1 more, because there is no shrimp in our area. So it is more in that. So it is very important, even when you compare India in Andhra Pradesh and other states are very different in the cost of production, the efficiency of production, and also the price availability to them. This is what I'm meant to say.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. Thanks for clarifying that. On pricing, Samson, I'd just like to ask you about this situation we're currently seeing in China with the the prices up very, very high year on year. Although if you look back at previous years, it's kind of maybe more in line what we saw in previous years, with China at this time of year. But anyway, certainly compared to last year, it's rocketing. Can you just tell us a bit more about what's going on there, please?
I think the recent rocket high price is a bit abnormal in a way, and that's mostly, I think you should mention perhaps the $12, $13, even 2 days ago's price still went up a bit, despite the Chinese New Year is almost finished. Normally before the Chinese New Year, as you can imagine, the price went up in expecting the consumption during the Chinese New Year, but just 2 days ago, price went up again instead of reducing, which normally in a normal year we will see the price will be reducing after the Chinese New Year, as everybody has been eating too much and the demand of shrimps will go down. But the recent price was, I think, is coupled with the demand, coupled with the import in the second half that you see in 2020 that has been gone down a lot, and mostly because of, I think, the consumer confidence of the packaged seafood in general, shrimp included, that has really hampered the demand of the Chinese consumer. So it's a stay and night between the fresh shrimp price, which are domestically produced, and the imported frozen shrimp price is almost more than double. So I think, unfortunately, we have not seen, or I have not heard, the consumer confidence in China has turned back to the packaged food yet. Before that's come back, I think the domestic fresh seafood and shrimps price will still remain at higher level compared to the imported one. Still hearing also a lot of seafood seller have still having a lot of their stock frozen seafood imported has not been offloaded from their warehouse yet. So I think in order to see if the imported price improve in general, I think the consumer confidence need to be back. And generally in the past, learning from the other industry like African swine fever or bird flu, it takes quite some long times to gain back the consumer confidence.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see how that plays out over the first half of this year, given just how steep the drop in imports was in the second half of last year. Thanks, Samson. Gabriel, over to you. You wanted to make a point about Ecuador.
Yes. When we were talking about the production, sorry, I go back to production, but Mr. Robbins mentioned that in Thailand, the production was growing steadily, 20%, 25% a year, and then suddenly they dropped. But the difference between Ecuador and Thailand is that we are seeding 15 animals per square meter and producing 3 tons per year per hectare in the best case scenario, or in the average, not in the best case scenario. There's some farms that are producing a little better than that, but I don't think we are anywhere near our capacity and density to run into a downfall like it was in Thailand. I think that the growth in Thailand was much more aggressive. I think that our growth and Ecuadorian growth, even though it seems aggressive in numbers just because it climbs every year, I think it's very steady. It's very healthy. It looks very healthy from where I'm standing. I mean, we go to the farms, seeding 15 animals per square meter. Yes, we're doing aeration. We've improved our pumps, our water pumps. That's 70% of the work right there. And we're not intensifying. It's very rare you find somebody seeding over 50 animals per square meter. That's a crazy number here in Ecuador. You say 50 animals per square meter in Ecuador, it's wow, that's way too much. Watch out. Nobody's even trying that. I mean, if we're talking about 15 animals per square meter, it's still not a lot of density. I mean, I think you'd agree with me on that one.
Yeah, well, thanks a lot, Gabriel. Yeah, good point to make. I also wanted to ask you about the pricing outlook in Ecuador. I mean, obviously the prices have really dropped, further than other production countries due to, I suppose, the historical, strong exports to China. But do you envisage that that's going to happen, stay the case over the course of this year? And has the farming industry, kind of set itself up so that they can still make money at this price level?
Well, 2020 was as I mentioned before, it was a horrible year because the product that we were doing was shut down. The product form that we were supplying to the world, we were supplying China in blocks, we were supplying the USA in blocks, we were supplying Europe in blocks, and our product form was shut down. That's what COVID hit. COVID did not hit value-added IQF bags. It increased it exponentially. Retail is they're using they're using new recipes all the time, finding it online, whatever it is, and the consumption is there. The product is being consumed. We were just selling the wrong product. So yes, our prices for our selling scheme, our selling format was the most affected, I would say, of all the world, right? We are constantly producing. We have shrimp all year round. And during the first half of 2020, COVID shut down the demand. It literally put a plug on demand and said there's no more demand because Italy shut down, France shut down, Spain shut down, the US shut down after March X or April, right? So all of the demand when we were producing was shut down. Nobody else is producing their most shrimp during that season. That's our big season is 12 months of the year. Other people have big seasons after June, after May, and then Central America comes in very late in April. So our product was the most hit. That's why our price went down the furthest. That's why our price is still the lowest, because it went down the furthest. So you have to bring it up gradually, and we have to increase our breakdowns of products that we are producing. We cannot continue to produce blocks when people cannot use blocks. You don't take a block of 5-pound shrimp when you're a 2-people family and bring it home, because then you would have to thaw out the block and put another block back into the fridge, right? You need not 1 extra fridge, 7 extra fridges to keep products if you were taking them in blocks. So yes, our prices were hit the most. Now, what happened after that is we started to do value added. The market is getting back on its feet. We had, of course, the problems that everybody knows we had in China with COVID and white spot and all of that story. For me, China is clearly trying to protect local farmers. That makes a lot of sense. You want to protect your own production, so you want to keep as much of the imports limited as much as possible, and with sanitary restrictions, with whatever you can to keep your local production and to motivate your local producers, which is important and it's good. But they still need shrimp. Their purchases in December from Ecuador were very low. In January, very low. We're talking 28 million pounds, of which some is going for reprocess and some is going for consumption, maybe 20 million pounds out of Ecuador when they were buying 70 million. So there's 2 things to note about that. The first is Ecuador clearly found another place to put their shrimp. That's the first thing. And that's the very most important thing, is we were very heavy into that market and we found a different place to put our shrimp. So that are now
I think we lost Gabriel. Tom, put on. Tom, unmute your mic, Tom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Robbins, I was going to ask you about consolidation in Ecuador, like as to whether you think that the low prices are likely to drive consolidation in the farming sector in Ecuador, and also whether you see consolidation taking place anywhere else in the world, in the shrimp sector this year.
Well, I don't really know enough about the situation in Ecuador to say. Again, in general, if small farmers are stressed to the point they're maybe more susceptible to buyouts and to consolidation, and it may be that if the low prices in Ecuador stress small farmers, that larger farmers could come and increase their own farming. But I don't know what the stress level is on small farmers at this point. Clearly, Ecuador is still making money. Clearly, Ecuador is still producing shrimp. And consolidation doesn't always lead to higher profitability. Consolidation in the rest of the world, I think you have consolidation in some of the industries. Farming, actually, small farmers and individual farmers sometimes have an advantage over an integrated farmer. So I think that activity is not going to be as strong as you would think. Probably more integration relative to increasing size of hatchery groups or feed mill groups.
Yeah, on the topic of consolidation, I just wanted to ask you, Samson, about that. I mean, how do you see the the kind of the sort of, I suppose, post-pandemic, the sort of recovery? Well, not post, we're still in it, but there is a sense of the world is moving into recovery mode. Do you see that that's going to that dynamic's going to drive consolidation in the shrimp farming and processing and feed sectors in Asia in the future?
Well, Grobest is not an integrator either, and I kind of agree with Robin that I think farming is when we're dealing with live animal is always not easy, and a lot of uncertainty, and especially aquaculture, more so in aquaculture than animal husbandry on the land. There are a lot more complexity in the water and for the environment to be controlled. So farming is always relatively risky compared to processing or feed milling. And I would tend to see that I think the farmers may be getting bigger, but whether it is more advantageous to getting consolidated that whole value chain, I'm not sure. But definitely there could be collaborations between among the value chain, processor, feed millers, and maybe even big farmers are collaborating with each other.
I think we've got Gabriel back there. Hi, Gabriel. Welcome back.
Hello, thank you. Sorry about that.
It's all right. The camera's off. Yeah, maybe I'm just asking Robbins. I want to ask you really about your views on potential for consolidation to take place in the Ecuadorian farming sector. I mean, do you think that this situation could drive more of that amongst farming? I think it's probably unlikely amongst the packing industry because it's quite consolidated anyway. But maybe you might have a view on that.
Well, there's definitely some people, some farms that are less profitable than others. Some farms are losing money. The farms that are located in more difficult areas, it's not a high percentage of farms. But if you have a farm that is losing money, you're going to look to try and find somebody to consolidate with, or to somebody to help you produce. Whoever is producing profitably maybe can teach you how to produce profitably. I don't think we're at that point yet in Ecuador. I think that that's not a 2021 kind of picture. And from the first 60 days with the increases in prices locally, I think that farmers get motivated, and then as they get motivated, they get farther away from that idea of consolidating. Nobody consolidates when they're making enough money or they're making money. So I think that could have been an option if COVID, if the situation or the market as it was in 2020 would remain, but I think it's not. I think we've already seen a lot of improvements in the market in the past 6 weeks.
Okay, well, thanks a lot. Yeah, back to you, Samson, on the consolidation front. Well, I just wanted to kind of get a bit of a sense from you about what briefly what Grobest is looking at doing this year. I mean, are you on the hunt for acquisitions, and if so, in which countries? And then, if not, if you're looking at organic expansion in different countries, can you maybe give us a sense of what you're looking at doing there?
We're actually doing both organic and also on the M&A agenda. We have not been, we have never stopped looking at opportunities to grow inorganically in the major shrimp farming countries. Grobest is basically an aqua feed nutrition company and functional performance feed company. So we help dealing with farmers who have a challenge with the diseases as well. So wherever we see the great opportunities that we have been discussing in the last 1 hour, especially in Asia, the country that we just mentioned, Indonesia, India, China, Vietnam, and even Thailand, we are increasing our capex in our organic growth in terms of capacity. At the same time, we're also actively looking at opportunities that can help us to expand our footprint to help our farmers.
Okay, well, thanks, Samson. We're going to go around and ask everyone else to just tell us a bit about what you're, going with, what you're planning with your own businesses for this year. So maybe Robbins, you could start by telling us a bit about what the latest is with Homegrown Shrimp USA, this land-based project in Florida, which CP is doing.
Well, homegrown is not exactly the emphasis of CP, but it is an initiative to try to see if we can put in technologies that can actually grow shrimp in the United States and make a profit in not a commodity shrimp, but in more of a premium shrimp market. Homegrown shrimp, basically, it's an inland shrimp farm. It's in Florida. Even though Florida is the warmest of the states, it's still very cold here. So this is a totally new experience for a tropical shrimp producer like myself or CP. So, having to learn to work in insulated buildings, having to work with no waste discharge. There's no allowable waste or water discharge in our site. So everything has to be totally recycled year after year. We basically produced or put in a small hatchery since there really was no dedicated hatcheries to quality post-larvae in the United States. We needed a hatchery. So we are operating and producing what we think are pretty good post-larvae right now. And the results of those post-larvae certainly have made a difference for other small farmers in the United States. And that's always been the philosophy of CP, is to provide the tools to make farmers successful and profitable and rich. So that's kind of what we're trying to do here, establish an industry in the United States where an industry does not exist. So provide the good tools and then provide the pilots and provide the blueprints for how it can be done. But this is strictly an R&D type of effort right now, and we're learning as much as we are producing.
But then, when are you planning to have shrimp ready for the market?
Okay, our post-larvae are ready now.
Yeah.
Our farm is basically going up now. So it's kind of a prefab metal building with tanks, et cetera. So it's a plug and play type of thing. So I'm hoping to stock the farm for the first time in May and hopefully have product in the market by late July or August.
And then in the future to expand this module in the current location, but then also look to expand.
If the module works as we plan it to work, it could be played anywhere. So it's anytime, anywhere type of system. So we can put it outside of any urban area and scale it to the amount of premium shrimp that urban area may require. And premium is defined as fresh, never frozen.
Okay, thank you. Well, Manoj, maybe you can give us a bit of a sense on what's on the agenda for Mayank this year. What are you planning to do with the business this year? Are you looking to increase your production?
See, right now, because I'm doing shrimp farming from last almost 3 decades now. I have seen the rise and fall in monodon era. Also, I'm seeing a very big tsunami in India, and again, then there's a fall. So what I understood, during monodon also, when India in my area, when the average rates were very low, so I used to grow very bigger size monodon, even 50 gram, 60 gram monodon, and used to make double the profit. So the same trend when Vanami came into my farm. So in 2011, I was the one who started the concept farming Vanami the black tiger way, because our entire infrastructure and everything was suited for monodon, and we didn't upscale that infrastructure. So 2011 to 2016-17, I literally made very good money by growing very big Vanami in this area. But now, since you see, as the production increased in our country and we need to deal with the international market, now the sizes preference is getting down to 50, 60, 70 preference. But in my particular area, because of the input cost, high input cost, I'm not able to really produce the small count with that profit margin to survive. So recently, I have developed my own hatchery. I have already developed my own, as Robin said, multi-phase indoor. And my planning this time is not to follow the regular program, regular rut, where each and everybody is going for the same season and again producing within the 4 months. So last season, I did a very good trial in my three-phase system, where PL4 is reared up to PL15, and PL15 to PL35 into a second phase, and PL35 to 60 days into the farming. So producing shrimp in off season is what I'm looking to have a better price and better profitability. So I have almost 150 to 200 hectares of shrimp farming. So, but I'm a big fan of monodon. So I still believe that black is still beautiful and it's going to really get back to India. So this year I'm trying back another 50 hectares into monodon, because since the Moana, the SPF has come to India. So this season I will definitely try to get it into the bigger sizes. So that is more profitable, whatever happened in last 10 years for me. And now all depends upon that. But definitely my target is to have a small period in the farm, because as Robin says, definitely there is old diseases and new diseases are coming up, and it is becoming very, very difficult. In Indian scenario, I will tell you, summer, the Vibrio is killing, the bacteria is killing the shrimp. In monsoon and winter, white spot is killing the shrimp. So we need to find a genuine escape way to survive. And that's what I feel as a farmer. Shortest the crop is better the survivability. So when you have a seed in multi-phase and then you transfer it to the pond, so you get an assured crop in 80 to 100 days. That's what I'm looking, and my target is to produce almost 1,000 ton this time in my farm. Thanks,
Manoj. Very interesting. I mean, Gabriel, have you got anything to add on your sort of your business plans for this year and what you're looking to do? Gabriel, you there? Seems to have gone again. In that case, let's get to the questions.
No. I think can you hear me?
Yeah, but your video's off. Can you switch your video on?
I think it's a connection issue.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, just tell us a bit about your plans for this year, and then I'll get to the questions, because there's quite a few questions have come in which I'd like to get to.
Okay, so for 2021, the idea is to go back to where we were producing as far as stocking density in our own farms. In 2020 we actually decreased the density of our farms. There's some people that increased them to be able to cope with the low prices, and some others decreased them and tried to find other ways to decrease their costs, because we had to, with the prices that were going on, we had to decrease our prices, our costs significantly in order to survive. So this year we're going to try and go back, once we've restructured our fixed costs, try to go back to seeding a little more like we were in the past, 12 animals, 13 animals per square meter, that we did in the beginning of 2020, and continue on with that. The other thing that's been great in Ecuador is that we were growing usually between 1.4 and 1.5 grams per week. And today that's up to 1.8, 1.9 grams per week. So that's another one of the factors that is important for us as far as production. I know other places grow much more, they grow better, but we're taking it step by step and quite slowly.
Okay, thanks, Gabriel. Well, let's get to some questions from the audience, because we've had some good ones come in. Question here from Tony Watkinson in the UK, from Laborie Fine Foods. What are the panel's general views on prices for 2020 for Vaname, and specifically for AS certified Vaname material? And are there any views on certified growth, on growth of certified production, specifically ASC? So I don't know who would like to take that. Maybe someone can jump in there. Gabriel, do you have a view, seeing as Ecuador is doing decent volumes of ASC? Is that likely to increase?
I think that the prices throughout, they have, if you take Ecuador into consideration, it'll be much different than every other part of the world, because the other prices did not drop as much as Ecuador. So for us, yes, prices will increase, but I don't think that for the rest, we have to catch up to the rest of the world, is what I'm trying to say. Our prices were so low that we have to catch up to the rest of the world. So I think that yes, for Ecuadorians, price will increase, not necessarily for the rest of the world. We're just going to catch them to the levels that they were.
Then, Manoj, what are you anticipating in India price-wise this year? Because if production is kind of a bit sluggish, as you and Robbins have forecasted, and demand is strong, is it not likely that prices for raw material in India could increase quite substantially, potentially?
See, honestly, I'd like to add that, if you see the world market, it is categorized in three: the premium market, head-on, and the PD, PDTO, and the value addition. India is very poor in the value addition part. Our packers need to understand that unless and until we add on the skill of value addition in line with Vietnam, we will definitely not able to get the appreciation in the price. And when you talk about supplying a small count shrimp, that can be very, very much possible from Andhra Pradesh and all. But when it comes to my part of the country, when I talk from Gujarat, Odisha, to supply shrimp right now, that present competitive price will be a big setback to the farmers. So I think the farmers, the packers, they need to get in line with each other, try to understand, try to integrate, and look for the new markets and maybe we also need to go back to Europe, because a lot of issues, Indian issues are there with Europe. But if the Europe market gets open up, then definitely we'll have premium prices for our head-on products. So that is where, if you get into a right market, right group, definitely that price realization will pass on to the farmers. That is what I think. But in the present scenario, if you don't look into the new markets, the new aspects, value addition, then I think we need to survive with this, what offers from the international market.
Thanks, Manoj. Okay, we've got a question here from Juan Manuel Reyes from Euracua Trading in Spain. What is your opinion about the possible evolution of export sales prices from Ecuador to China? Will the Ecuadorian farming industry continue to lose money? I guess, Gabriel, you're the man to take this.
The first part is will we return to China? I think yes. I don't think we're going to return to China in the volumes that we were in the past, but China is definitely an important market for us. And even though we have decreased our volume there, our presence is well accepted among consumers. So they want our product. So that's the first part of it. And then the second part of it, will we continue to lose money to sell to China? We're not losing money to sell to China. Otherwise, we wouldn't have grown what we grew. So if you were losing money, you don't grow and lose more money every year, because it just doesn't fall out of the tree. You have to turn a profit. So we found a way to be profitable selling to China head on. Yes, over the years, they have crunched our margins, and prices have decreased every year. after our volume has increased. But I think it's fair to say that we are definitely going to be in China, and we are going to continue to supply China. Maybe not as much, and hopefully not as much as we were supplying them before, just because of a weight issue, of a balance in your exports. You want to be balanced. You want to take, in my opinion, we want to have China, USA, or be it 25, 25, 25, and find others in a 25%, something like that. So I think that we are going to go back into China for sure, and we're going to be strong there as well.
Thanks, Gabriel. Got a question here from Oliver Giblin from Sea Products International. In what way, if any, will the projections of the speakers for 2021 and in the longer term be affected by the availability or lack of labour supply? Value added in many cases requires additional labour and appears a crucial development area as raw material supply increases. Does anyone want to chip in there on, how like the lack of labour could actually impact this development? I guess maybe it would be particularly interesting to hear from India and Ecuador on that, because obviously labour is an issue in Ecuador, right? Cost of.
Well, yeah. So in Ecuador, one of our biggest issues throughout the past, and it's always been an issue, is that Ecuador is dollarized. So our factories have a high cost of producing value-added items. Now, when we found a way to sell our product without doing value-added, it was perfect and fine. But now we have to tweak our production system and our factories to find a way to produce cost-effective, competitive value-added to be able to sell to the other markets. So even though it's an issue, we're going to work our way around the issue. We're going to find a way, and we are already. I mean, it's clear that Ecuador in the last 6 months of the year, last year, had a great increase in the United States. We increased from sending 20 million pounds in the high. Now we're sending 34 million pounds. We ended the year with 50% more exports to the USA. So if you look at it from the export point of view, we're clearly stepping into the value added, and we're doing a fair job in it.
Thanks, Gabriel. One for you, Robbins, here from Bala Subramaniam from Certified Farms in India. Bala's asking, how soon can we get CP's broodstock from Florida into India?
Let me go back to the processing question. At CP in Thailand, we understand that we have labor issues and labor shortages. So we're putting a lot of money into automation, robotics, and AI. And so I think in the future, processing of shrimp will take a new look as technology comes to play a more important role. Broodstock in India from Florida. Look at maybe 2022.
Okay, thanks, Robbins. Another question here from Tony Watkinson from Laborie again. If we saw China return to import levels of 2018, 2019, we would obviously see huge price increases. What is the likelihood of this happening in 2021? Maybe Robbins, you could give a view on that.
Now, what was the question again? If
we saw China return to import levels of 2018, 2019, we'd obviously see huge price increases. Given, I suppose the forecast on production. What's the likelihood of this happening in 2021?
Well, anytime we see huge price increases, we also have impetus for increasing production. So that's when new capital flows and we get extra. So it would be a blurb in prices if that happened. I don't necessarily see that happening right now, but if all of a sudden there became an imbalance and prices blurb up, there would be more investment and there'd be more production in the world faster. And therefore, the prices would come back down to a more normalized place on the curve.
Yeah, true. Yeah. Question here from Leader Farfan. Let's make this the last one because it's a good question to finish on. Leader's asking, will Ecuador get to the 1 million metric tons sooner than India? Which I guess it'd be good to get everybody to give an answer to that, and then also, if you don't think it's going to be Ecuador or India, say who it's going to be. I mean, Robbins, you've already kind of talked about Vietnam earlier, but I think that would be a good way to finish if everybody goes around and gives their opinion on that question. Robbins, do you want to kick off?
Well, you already, it's all guessing.
You've said Vietnam, I guess.
So basically, I like the idea for Vietnam because I don't see the exuberance. So I think over exuberance sometimes kills the goose.
Yeah, okay. Samson, do you want to say who you think will be the 1 million ton winner?
Yeah. If you're gonna pick one, I think so far Ecuador has proven they have managed a very difficult year very well, from really manufacturing from China to somewhere else. Instead, I think India as a whole is still seeing a lot of setback due to COVID. So if I have a bet, I think Ecuador will probably be the winner.
Okay, Manoj?
As I said, definitely India has a potential to even cross 1 million metric ton. But as a farmer, I will not advise right now that we should gear up to get into the race of who is the first. Maybe India can be second, third in the line. But I think unless and until it makes sustainable and profitable for the industry, we should not rush to produce more. I think that's what my message is to my farmers. I think, but definitely you ask me, India has a better potential than any other country to cross the 1 million mark.
Yeah, but it should be a quality and quantity.
Yes. Right now, system is not geared up, and we are not prepared to handle that production. Yes, I'll tell you, our domestic market is highly underrated. If the government really push and the farmer association really pick up the domestic market arena, India has a potential to consume 1 million metric ton in the country, because we are already consuming 14 million metric tons of fish domestically. So that's where is a very big market.
Yeah, that's a great point. Gabriel, what about you? I guess you're going to say Ecuador already, aren't you?
Well, I mean, I think that we were on our way without COVID. We were on our way. Our production matrix, our farms, our factories more than everything was suited in a non-COVID world to reach the 1 million mark quickly. We were going to get there. I mean, 25%. Yes, last year we were already talking 25% growth, and it wasn't a crazy growth. I think that India, of course, has the capacity to do it. I think that if Vietnam becomes if their intensive projects are developed, it's a race to getting to the 1 million mark. I think it's a race to keeping this as profitable as possible so that we keep supply there. The world demand is there, and it keeps on growing. Let's grow with demand, and let's not get crazy and look for marks or 1 millions or 2 millions or 1.6s or 1.4s. Everybody who's producing today has gone through hardship, has gone through difficulties, have gone through disease, through all sorts of problems. And we're all still here, and we're all strong, and we're all coming back year after year with better numbers. We have our downs, we have our ups, but eventually we get back on place. And I think it's just, let's keep the world supply where it is. Let's keep it increasing healthy. Let's stay here. The demand is there. If there is no drop suddenly from anybody, the price will gradually follow us. If there's a drop, of course, you'll see a bloop in the market. And yeah, if somebody drops 5-10% and they weren't expected to drop, we'll see it in the market. We'll see it immediately. This world market, the supply and demand world market, when something varies 1%, you feel it in the other side of the world. If India is down 1% for some reason on some item on a 3140 P&D, I feel it the next day. If somebody was out there to book 15 loads that night and they didn't, they come back the next day and the next morning to us. And they say, listen, I was going to book this in India and I couldn't. Can I get 15 loads of this? It's all connected. So we need to keep growing steadily with demand, and we need to do as much efforts as possible to grow demand. Publicity, proper publicity, sustainability, the whole works. We just need supply to keep on growing with us. We know and we believe in our protein. That's why we're here. Everybody who's here, I think, loves this protein and loves this shrimp. So we love and believe in it. Let's not get crazy with marks. Nobody wants to win. We just want to supply it properly.
Let's not bring shrimp farming to the Olympics.
Correct. I mean, we all look like we know.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Let's not bring it to the Olympics. Nobody wants to beat.
No, and we all look like we know what we're doing. So if it's a matter of
that's
growing,
what I'm saying. As a farmer, I'm saying, let's not get into the race.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I have a bathtub at home that's not producing any shrimp.
There's actually one final question has come in. We'll leave it there. It's one for Samson. It's coming from Jihua Pai from Cargill in the US. And Jihua wants to know what Samson's view is on shrimp, the shrimp production in China, basically in the coming years. What's the outlook in China in the coming years? And then we'll close it there.
China is always a difficult nut to crack in terms of the volume productions, but we believe that there was somewhere around 800,000 tons productions, and consumption is a lot more. That's why we're still holding a strong belief that China will be a net importer. It's just from home.
Do you think though that that there will be more production stimulated by these high prices, or do you think that would have happened anyway? Given that the prices are,
there will be. I think particularly in the north and the east, with the new farming area, with relatively less disease challenges and more intensifications in those areas. But in the south, it's relatively challenging because of many years of diseases. So success rate over there is really low. In general, I think China will still grow, but with probably a low single-digit percentage year on year.
Well, thanks, Samson. I think that we should finish it there. We've ran over a bit, but I wanted to get in some of the nice questions which have been asked. So thank you to all the panelists. Thanks for giving up your time and contributing your great insights. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. Thank you. Take care and have a good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. Goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.